Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here today. I want to let you know that this webinar is recorded, and so I'll be sharing the recording with everyone afterwards. And then also in the chat section here in the Teams webinar, you can send messages. And so if you have any questions during the webinar, or if you have any questions around use cases, please feel free to send a message there, and I'll take a look at it afterwards, and I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you so much. My name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Matrix. So my goals today is one, to help you understand the basics of Matrix, help you become more effective and efficient at prioritizing tasks, projects, and emails, help you envision what your work and life success may look like with Matrix, and then lastly, and perhaps most importantly, help you understand 20% of the features in Matrix that will give you 80% of the benefits. I'm going to make the assumption that most of you are relatively new to the software system. And so we'll be talking a little bit about the fundamentals behind the software, as well as how to use the basic features in a web application, as well as our Teams and Outlook integrations. I do want to mention that we do cover other topics with the webinars. And so if there's something here that you're missing, definitely check out some of our other webinars. So let's start with the challenges that I've seen customers face over and over again. Over the past decade or so, I've talked to thousands of customers, and interestingly, the challenges remain the same. First, there's three reasons customers come to Matrix: to be better at keeping track on the status of work across many areas of responsibilities. And then secondly, to create alignment across team members so then everyone knows what's important. And then thirdly, to take back controls of emails and meetings. And so what that means is that you're actually able to focus on key tasks as opposed to being always chasing that last task that you were assigned to. And interestingly, it's just as important to look at what happens when we don't prioritize. And the reason I bring this up is because I'm constantly tackling this myself, because I have just so many things on my plate at any point in time. It's so challenging. And anytime that I find myself not focused on the most important tasks, I find that I start losing sight on what's important and end up working on the wrong things. And so you could get really deep into the woods every single day and work on things that don't truly matter. And then at the same time, you start feeling busy, but you're not meeting your goals, right? That's because we're just working down the wrong path, and we're not working on things that are truly important. And then lastly, you're completely overwhelmed by emails and meetings. And so I get hundreds of emails per day. It's very, very difficult to be on top of that. And so for me, I always try my best to prioritize those most important emails to make sure that I actually will get to them at some point. So Matrix is a comprehensive email, priority, and project management software. And it helps at three different levels. I think at the individual level, it helps you prioritize your most important tasks and emails every single day. When Matrix was first created 15 years ago, it was a software for individuals. And so what it did was help an individual prioritize their task. And then over time, what happens is that we start realizing, wait a minute, if you're able to prioritize your task, imagine if you can prioritize, if you can actually show those priorities to your team members and then be able to see their priorities. And so that's how Matrix helps teams become aligned on not just personal priorities, but across team priorities. And then lastly, as Matrix is used within your organization, and as you create more and more projects and use it over years, perhaps, it creates what's called a single source of truth to help everyone become more efficient and more effective. So imagine being able to understand what's not just priority today, but what was priority in the past, right? And so the whole goal of Matrix is to be able to give you that insight and that visibility on what's truly important at any moment in time. So what makes Matrix better is that first, we're the only software that's Microsoft 365 security certified in the Teams app, Outlook app, and web app. And we're actually very, very deeply integrated into Teams, Outlook, and Copilot. Now, you don't have to be a Microsoft user to use Matrix. The software solution works completely independently of the Microsoft ecosystem. But if you use Microsoft Office 365 or the like, then Matrix is actually so deeply integrated that you have to, pretty much get our Teams Outlook integrations. We're also one of the very, very first solution integrated into Microsoft Copilot. And if you don't know what that is, it's essentially just Microsoft AI, where you can just talk to their AI and you can actually ask it to do stuff inside Matrix. So that's really, really powerful. I won't be showing that today, but if you're interested in that for enterprise organization, definitely reach out to us. Thirdly, Matrix focuses solely on prioritization, front and center, every step of the way. And so when I show you the product, you'll see that, the way we approach prioritization is meant to be very visual. Now, I know that, for the people who are here today and the people listening to this webinar afterwards, you guys have probably seen every task management software under the sun, right? And there's just thousands of them. So many project management software, there's thousands of them. But what's really interesting is at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the software is, it matters how you use it and how you think about priorities. And so we are focused on a very specific approach to prioritization, which again, I'll walk you through, but you'll see that's front and center for everything that we do. And then fourthly, Matrix provide what I call people-centric collaboration as well. Being able to understand what priorities are within context is so important. So you're always thinking about what you have to work on in the context of projects, but also in the context of people. What do I have to do for this person? What do I have to do for my manager? What do I have to do for my colleague? And so I'll try to show you that as well. And then lastly, Matrix is available as a standard software as a service solution, but also we have a HIPAA compliant solution for healthcare life sciences, as well as an Azure government cloud solution for state and local governments. And then, of course, we have enterprise solutions on private hosting. So again, many of you will start the software at the SaaS and stay there. But for those within your organization, if you're looking for some of these other options, definitely reach out to us. We'd be happy to explain them to you. So what makes Matrix effective is that it does three things. It helps you understand what needs to be worked on now, what you should work on later, what are the things you should delegate. And one thing to realize is that priorities are constantly shifting, right? It's not a static thing, it's a dynamic thing. Now, you can think of goals, maybe they're a little bit more static, right? You don't have a new annual goal every week, but working towards that goal might be very, very different. And so being able to be flexible on that is so crucial. So the way it works with Matrix is it offers one place where everyone can go to know exactly what needs to be done. And one thing I want to note, after this webinar or as you're listening to this, is that when you use Matrix, you should be able to achieve these things that I'm talking about. And if you're not, then we're doing it wrong, right? And so the way you're using it might not be as effective. So if you find that there's any challenges around understanding these aspects that I'm mentioning, definitely reach out to us to request assistance. That's what we're here for. So let's talk about the fundamentals behind Matrix. So there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." Now, what I really like about this quote is that it breaks down all these things that we work on into the two dimensions of urgency and importance. And what's fascinating is that a lot of us, myself included, we're constantly being bombarded by urgent things. That last email that came in, a message from a customer, a message from your teammate, and say, "Hey, can you look at this? Can you do this?" and so forth. And I struggle with that every single day. The question is that the most important thing that you need to work on at this moment in time? And more often than not, the answer is no. That last email that just came in is not the most important email. If you could answer only one email, it probably isn't that last email that came in, right? It's another email that's hidden under the other 15 emails that you have. And so if you think about your task, if you think about everything you have to do, we tend to struggle with understanding where we should spend our time. And instead, we usually do that last thing in is first thing out. And so that last task that person assigned to you is the one that you end up working on. That last email that comes in is the email that you respond to. So there's something called the Eisenhower Matrix that spawns out of this particular philosophy. It's just a simple yet powerful time management framework that helps you prioritize based on importance and urgency. And instead of having one long to-do list, you categorize everything into 4 quadrants based on, again, the dimensions that I have, the important and urgent, the important and not urgent, and so on. And then thirdly, what it does is it helps you prioritize your task, or at the very least, it gives you visibility on what are the things that you should be working on if you actually were to think about where to best allocate your resources. So those 4 quadrants become the do now, right? The things you should truly be spending your effort on at any point in time. The plan quadrants, those are the important but not urgent, the things you should start thinking about whenever you have the extra bandwidth. And then the not important but urgent, perhaps you could delegate that to somebody else, your personal assistants or another team member whose priorities are those particular tasks, or not do them at all. And then lastly, instead of looking at anything that's not important or not urgent, you have what's called your inbox. This is where you track all those things that you might have to do, but you don't know exactly where it fits in yet. So now this is a very simple exercise, but imagine if you take out a piece of paper at this moment and start writing down all those things you have to do, right? Initially, it will be a list. And so you have the things at the very top, and all the way to the bottom, you have maybe 15 things or so. Now, my challenge to you is take those tasks and put it into this 2x2 matrix, these various buckets, the important and urgent bucket, the important but not urgent bucket, and so forth. Then that's how, when you start your day, you should look at that matrix and understand where you can best spend your time and effort. This next part is where it's really fascinating. Ask all your coworkers to do the exact same exercise. Then walk around the office and start comparing notes. And the magic that comes from this simple exercise is coming to an agreement or realization even that maybe your priorities aren't the same as your coworkers' priorities, which might not be the same as your manager's priorities, which might not be the same as your client's priorities, and which might not be the same as your executive team's priorities. And that is where it is so interesting. So many of us go and plan our day and plan our tasks and plan our goals within the silo of our own list, but instead we rarely get the chance to compare the notes and make it easy to actually look at everyone's priorities. So the 4 quadrant Eisenhower matrix create alignment because it forces you to prioritize from the beginning. Again, if you brought that to-do list with 15 items in one list and show to your coworkers, you may or may not see those alignment or misalignment that easily. And because you're like, oh, yeah, I have the same 15 items. But the difference is how they fit within the bigger picture. And what I think is the most fascinating thing about using Protomatrix isn't about necessarily finding what everyone agrees on. It's discovering disagreements on what should be a priority when it isn't. And this is where Protomatrix creates the most value at any point in time. So, if we are not aware of all these mismatches in priorities, then we wouldn't be able to talk about them. And so when I think about Party Matrix and when I give customers guidance on how to best use Party Matrix, I always think of Party Matrix as a communication tool. So what that means is that you are looking at it as a way to communicate your priorities to your coworkers and then vice versa. And then always be looking at Party Matrix every single day to ensure that you guys are constantly aligned. And being able to share the same party matrix to your external clients and have them understand and come to agreement as well is just such a powerful thing. A couple of key tips and ideas right before I jump into the presentation, the product presentation. One, if everything's important and urgent, then nothing is important and urgent. If you take all those 15 items that you wrote down and you put them all in quadrant 1, then you've done nothing good, right? Instead, my rule of thumb is 20% or 25%, no more than 20 to 25% can be in quadrant 1, because that forces you to make those hard choices. Use Party Matrix to sync up on goals with team members. There's no reason why you have to stick with one Eisenhower matrix. In fact, in general, my advice is to create multiple matrices depending on the needs that you have. And so that could be on each project you work on, each goal you have, each initiative, or each team that you work with. And then you now have these matrices that you can use to talk to others and be able to clearly communicate exactly what everyone considered to be priorities. Regularly assess, reassess, and adjust your strategy based on results. If you have Party Matrix and you start working on the things in Q1, but you find that you're not moving the needle, then maybe the way you've prioritized is not optimal. And so that gives you a chance to go and reflect and see, are we working on the right things? Similarly, Party Matrix gives you these reports that let you see where team members are spending their time. Are team members spending the time on Q2 or Q3 instead of Q1? Well, so to have that visibility makes it so easy to fine tune your approach. One of the strategies I've seen very successful, and I continue to give this as a general advice, which is project your Party Matrix project onto the big screen during your team meetings. It is so easy, such a trivial exercise. You have a project called Team Priorities. Within those team priorities, you write down everything that, if you're the manager, you go and write down all the things that's on the plate for everybody, and then you have one central place. You project on the screen. Then when you go through and you have your discussions and your meetings, you can truly talk about the things that's in quadrant 1. And then again, if you identify topics that's not there, now you've suddenly uncovered issues that you weren't aware of prior. Other resources available. So if you go to our website, affluence.com/webinars, we do have webinars recording posted there and also upcoming webinars. And then also, I do want to encourage anyone to reach out to us at any point in time, helpdesk@affluence.com, if you have any particular questions around the software, implementation, etc. With that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into a demo of the software. And again, my goal here is to give you some guidance on features in Party Matrix, 20% of the features that gives you 80% of the value. It won't be comprehensive. I won't be able to show you every feature, and that's something that you can explore on your own. But hopefully this will be helpful. And if you do have questions around specific features, feel free to send it in the chat, and I'd be happy to take a look at it. Okay, and now I have my Party Matrix open. So this is the web app. So Party Matrix works on every single major platform. There's a desktop app for Windows, Mac. You can use the web app, obviously, from any browser. Also, you have the application inside Teams and inside Outlook and so on. I generally show the web app because the web app is universal, right? It doesn't matter what platform you're on. You can always go to partymatrix.com or go to affluence.com and click on the web app. As you can see, front and center is the 4 quadrants. Like I mentioned, for us, using the 4 quadrants is the core of what Party Matrix is all about. Everything that you do should not be a list. It should be within the context of an additional dimension. So in this case, importance and urgency. As you can see, the top left is do now, do later, delegate, and inbox. Now, let me give you a sense of a structure of Party Matrix. On the left-hand side, this is your list of projects. And so you can think of projects as being, again, something like, your personal priorities might be a project. Your team priorities might be a project. Your goals for 2024 might be a project, and so on and so on. So there's no reason why you can't have 10, 20, 30 projects. In my main account, my work account, I have more than 300 projects, and that's perfectly okay because they each are defined for that specific purpose. And in fact, it helps me stay organized a little bit more instead of having one super, super big matrix to see everything. Now, when I select a project, again, I have the 4 quadrants, and let's just say I want to create a task. So one of the tasks I have to do, obviously, is follow up with webinar participants. And then when I type a task in Party Matrix, I can actually just go and say, due tomorrow at 2 p.m. And so we use what's called natural language to understand what you type in there. And when I say due tomorrow 2 p.m., what happens is Party Matrix will automatically create the task. And then on the right-hand side here, it'll set the due date for me, and it uses my local time to set the due date, the due time. So when I select this task and after I create it, the right-hand side becomes what's called the item details. And this is where you can add additional information around the task itself. In general, you don't have to add too much, right? And when you're first starting Party Matrix, your task might just be the item name and the due date and so forth. But as you use Party Matrix more, you might want to go and add notes or subtasks or effort, etc. But that's completely optional. So when we think about the 20% of the features within the item details that I think you should use, I'm going to go through them right now. First, there's something called star. So when you star a task, for example, let's say I click on that star right there, it puts a star on the icon as well. What happens is that it pushes this task to the top of that list within the quadrants. So if you have 5 tasks, starring isn't that necessarily useful, right? Because you can easily see them. But as you have 50 or 100, you want to know what are the things that you should care about every single day. And so for me personally, what I do is I would star maybe 5 to 10 tasks within a critical project that I have, and then I would star specific projects, maybe 5 to 10 active project at any point in time. It allows me to jump in and find out exactly what's on my plate at any point in time. So I really like the star option for that reason. And then below that, you actually have icons. So icons is a very visual way to actually choose sort of a representation for this particular task. One area that I've seen customers use quite a bit is actually the color coding. So red, yellow, green might be just 3 very simple options for you to go and be able to signify that this task is on schedule or not on schedule, etc. Below that, you have ownership. So when you think about a task in a personal priority project, priority matrix, maybe I'm always the person responsible for a task. But in a team environment, the owner might be somebody different, right? And so you could have, your team of 5, you might have multiple people responsible for different things. And so, for example, let's say if I want to delegate this to another person, I simply click on that and then change their avatar. And so now you can see that within the matrix itself, their avatar shows up. They can upload their picture if needed, but in this case, E represents the initial of their name. And so if I were to have this project with a bunch of tasks in it, it is very easy for me to see, okay, Eugenia has these particular items due in this particular quadrant. And if I was a manager, I could be able to see whether or not the right people are assigned to the right task. To the right of that, you have due dates and reminders. And these two features, I think, are the most powerful and should be the most used features when you use Priority Matrix. So if you think about your task and you think about the concept of urgency, if you don't have due dates, how would you know if something's urgent or not, right? And so for me, every time I create a task and it's an important task, I always set a due date. The due date may not always be accurate, right? And I might have to change it, but that's okay. Inside Priority Matrix, you're able to change the due dates, you're able to update them, you're able to modify them, and then Priority Matrix offer a record of all those changes for me. So when I create a task and I assign to a coworker, that's again an important task, I always set the due date for that reason. And if the task is overdue and we need to reschedule it, we'll reschedule it, and now we can see, okay, you know what, this is rescheduled, and I can see the record of all those changes. Or if the coworker changes the due date, I see a record of that as well. Now, what's the difference between due dates and reminders? Let's just say if you have to work on a really important project. And so, for example, taxes were due a while back. And so imagine you work on taxes and it's due on April 15th. So you set the due date April 15th, and then you wait until April 15th to get started. That's not going to work so well, right? And so the way it works is then maybe you want to set a reminder ahead of time that says, remind me to work on the taxes a week prior. Or better yet, remind me on a weekly basis until I get this done. So in this particular case, let's just say I have the due date here, May 2nd. At the very bottom here, I'm going to say remind me daily. Again, Priority Matrix uses natural language to interpret that. And now on a daily basis, I'll get a reminder until I get this task done. When I have, again, important task, I always set due dates. So for example, let's say I need to follow up with a customer. I would say due in 1 month and remind me monthly. Now on a monthly basis, Priority Matrix will send me a reminder. It says, hey, you got to work on this task. And if I don't get around to it next month, it'll send me a reminder again. It's so powerful, so useful. And you should definitely use it for every single thing that is critical within your work pipeline. Below that, you have the chat section. In the chat section, as you can see, I'm interacting with it, right? But it's also a place for you to interact with your coworkers. So it's like a whole conversation. You can think of it as like an email thread, or if you use, communication software like Microsoft Teams, it's just like a Teams communication, but it's within the context of that task. And I think that's actually a very understated capability because when you think about your emails or your chat or conversations, you're jumping all over the place. You're talking about 10 different things. And so later on, when you need to review whether or not, or review what you talked about and so forth, it's virtually impossible because you didn't stay on topic. So the chat within one particular item helps you have everything within one context. And so when you have, again, an important task and you assign to a coworker and you have a conversation there, what's nice about it is when someone else comes in, they can review that chat and understand exactly what's everything that's been talked about. The notes section is where you can add additional information around the task. You can also add subtasks if needed. And then finally, the resources section is where you can upload files, documents, or emails related to this task. And so I'll show you that in just a moment. So that's the item details in a nutshell. Essentially, it's a place for you to add additional information around it. Again, the two most important features being the due dates and the reminders, and then starting the task if needed. So now let's talk about projects. So as I mentioned, on the left-hand side here, I selected my personal priorities, but I can click on here and I can choose another project, for example, my team priorities. Again, if you plan to use Matrix in a team environment, I highly recommend that you create a project called Team Priorities for that purpose. When I select this project for the first time, on the right-hand side, the project details open. And here I can click on this and change my project name if needed. I can star this project if needed, just like how it worked with tasks. When I star a project, it pops to the top of my list. And so for me personally, I have 5 to 10 star projects at any point in time. More than that, then it's like, the same concept of important and urgent, right? If everything's important and urgent, then nothing is. So if I start all my projects, then none of them are starred, and for lack of better words. So I start only the active ones. That helps me jump to them very easily. Below that, you have team members. And so this is where you can have different team members within every single project. So if you're a manager and you have 5 projects or 5 direct reports, you might have all 5 within here. But you might have another project where you only have 1 or 2 people on, et cetera. So Matrix gives you complete flexibility on whom you want within every single project. And then right below that, you have the quadrant names and the quadrant colors. So I showed you the Eisenhower Matrix, so where we say do now, do later, delegate, and inbox, but Matrix gives you infinite customization. So you can actually change the name of these quadrants. You can change the color of these quadrants to meet the needs within your own team, within your own organization. A couple of thoughts on the quadrant names. What happens is we actually have pre-made templates that lets you use Matrix for different purposes. For example, instead of actually using the Eisenhower Matrix, you might use Matrix what's called the impact effort, right? And so what are the things that are low effort but high impact? So that helps you identify, again, tasks that are high priorities by using different dimensions. And so this infinite customization makes it possible for you to use Matrix in ways that make sense to you. One thing that's really useful about Matrix too is the ability to save anything that you create as a template. So if you have a project and you start customizing these different quadrant names, you can go to the top right here and explore all the ways in which you can work with these projects. One of them being save project as templates, which allows you to actually recreate the matrix very, very easily without having to go and retype any of those things again. What's really awesome too is that if you have a matrix with a lot of tasks in it, you can actually save the whole thing as a template. So an example might be a client onboarding process, right? Or an employee onboarding process. And you create the 50 tasks you have to do, you save it as a template, then the next time you don't have to recreate those tasks. You just launch it from the template, set the start dates, and then all the due dates will be propagated forward for you automatically. Very, very powerful way to save you time and effort. So that's how a project can be customized. Now, to create a project is pretty simple. You click on project here, choose create project. And then, as I mentioned, you can always just do a blank project, which is the basic Eisenhower matrix. But once you go here, you can actually change the template type to something else. And so we have a couple of templates here that you can choose from out of the box. At the same time, if you go back here, you can click on what's called public templates, and you can actually choose from a larger list of templates that we have. And then on our website, we actually have hundreds of templates you can choose from. And so that's an infinite number of things you can do within the 4 quadrant approach itself. And then, as I mentioned, if you save your own templates, you can click on My Templates and then choose a template that's created within your own organization. So over time, as you use Matrix more and more, you can adapt it to work the way you want it to work. And then at the very last, the least but not last, we have the create with AI option, where essentially what happens is instead of creating a blank matrix to start with, you simply type in your goal. Example, I want to be promoted this year. Or example, I want to get a raise. Or I want to improve our process. You type in that goal here, you click next, and Party Matrix will generate a series of tasks for you based on those goals. So after this call, definitely try to explore this if you think that would be helpful as a way for you to actually get started with Party Matrix much more readily. Okay, now let's go back to Party Matrix here. As I mentioned, typically a good starting point is to create a project for your personal priorities. Because at the end of the day, if you can be successful with Party Matrix, everything else will fall into place, right? I wouldn't recommend that, when you start Party Matrix, you go super ambitious and try to do everything. Instead, focus on your success and then your team success and then your organizational success as part of the step-by-step process. And so I generally recommend creating several projects, my personal priorities, my team priorities. I always set a goal project for myself, mostly because it helps me stay aligned. And so when I go to my goal project, for example, I change the quadrant name to long-term goals, short-term goals, anti-goals, and catch-all, just as a way for me to make sure that I'm always working towards the big picture. Now, when I mentioned earlier around Party Matrix sending you due dates, reminders, and so forth, all that happens within the home view. So when you click on the home view, it's the place where you typically start your day in Party Matrix. Here in the alert section, you get information around tasks that are relevant to you. Example, if you're using it in a team environment, perhaps someone delegated you a task, right? That will show up here in the alerts. Or a task that you delegate to a coworker is completed. That will show up here in the alerts. Or the due date triggered, or the reminders trigger. And so when you start here, you'll see that, for example, I have 49 alerts here. I can see, okay, these are the 49 things that require my attention. I can click on each of them and see the changes for each. I can also jump to my agenda, which is a time-based version. And so if you set due dates on your task and you go to agenda, it helps you see what's coming up. What are the things that's happening tomorrow or later this week? And also, what are some of the things that happened yesterday that requires your attention? Party Matrix provides a lot of visibility across all your projects as well. So when you go to a view like the agenda or my items here, it shows you tasks across all of your Party Matrix. So we talked about how Party Matrix has all these different projects. And for me, again, personally, I have 300 plus projects. I don't actually have to click through every single project. That's the best part. I can actually see everything that's relevant to me by going through all the various views inside Party Matrix. The most comprehensive view is what's called the search view. So if you click on the search view here, it shows you everything across all of your Party Matrix. And then when you click on filter here, you can actually change all the ways in which you can find the information that you need. Now, when you first use Party Matrix, you won't have to worry about this part. But what I want to show you here is that as you master Party Matrix and then you're using Party Matrix and have thousands of items or hundreds of items, Party Matrix gives you unprecedented visibility on everything that you need. And so you don't have to worry about that. And then as you mark tasks as done, you can actually go here and find reports on what are the things you finished last quarter or last year, or what are the things you assigned to various folks, etc. So our ability to take all that data and helps you make sense of it is actually a very important feature. Okay, so now I do want just to quickly highlight that, if you're exploring Party Matrix, there's a lot of capabilities here on the left-hand side that I won't be talking about, but if you use the Party Matrix, you'll see them in the future, such as Gantt charts and calendars, etc. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and switch gear a little bit and talk about email management. So a lot of customers come to Party Matrix because they struggle with email prioritization. Party Matrix has a very, very powerful integration with Microsoft Outlook that helps you turn any email into a task. So for example, let's say I have an email here. So the first thing you want to do, let's say you have an email here that you have open. If you click on apps, you can actually go and click add apps and search for Matrix turn emails into tasks, which is our Outlook integrations. When you have this installed and you click on this icon here, you're able to take any email and choose prioritize email. Now, if you're like me and you get a lot of emails every single day, one of the things that we'd struggle with, or I struggle with, is what do I do when it's an important email and I need to answer it, right? Well, the most obvious is you just start. But then afterwards, what happens if you have not 5 start emails, but 50 start emails or 100 start emails? Then where do you start then? And so not only that, it's very difficult to actually remember a start email from a while ago. And so I'm guilty as charged, which is I have a lot of emails that are starred as well. But the problem is I can't find the ones that I really need to answer. So the way it works in Matrix is when I choose to prioritize an email, it gives me the option to capture the email, but I can put it within the appropriate matrix. So if I got an email from a certain customer, maybe I want to prioritize in one project, and I have emails from someone internal, I can actually prioritize it in another project and so forth. And not only that, I can choose what quadrant it goes in. And so now instead of actually just flagging that email, I'm organizing into specific projects, specific quadrants. In fact, I can even assign this email to another person. So that's very, very useful if you have an external email and now you need to assign to the coworker and then you set a due date. Again, the due date being the most powerful thing to ensure that people know this is important, but it's also urgent, and then ensuring that they get notifications when that task is due. And all you have to do is click capture email. And when you do, what happens is that it creates the task, the item details opens. It looks exactly like the item details inside Matrix. I can modify this as needed. I can add notes. And then if you click on the resources section, that email will be uploaded to here. And now your coworker can open the email directly from Matrix. One of the things I want to mention too is one of the things that makes Matrix for Outlook unique is the ability for you to attach emails to an existing task. I'm not aware of any other Outlook integration out there that does this, but let's just say I get an email, but what I want to do instead is actually integrate it and attach it to an existing task. Instead of clicking prioritize email, I open Matrix, and now if a customer is following with something, I can actually search for my item in Matrix here and then hover over that item and click attach. Now I can attach multiple emails, documents, PDF, presentation, links, and all that within one single task, giving me one central place to stay extremely organized and effective, and making sure that I'm not losing track of all of these emails that all fit together in one single context. The one thing I do want to mention with Matrix is that it is infinitely linkable. So what that means is you can actually link all these tasks together. And if you need to build Gantt charts and so forth, we actually let you do dependencies and related items, etc., all within the resources section. So that's how email prioritization works. And I have a webinar on email prioritization, and you can actually do a lot more with Matrix, including forwarding Matrix into your forwarding your emails into your Matrix account. That's something that I do all the time, which is, for example, what I can do is I can go to my inbox here. I can copy my secret inbox address and save that as a contact. And when I'm on the go and I'm on my phone and I get an important email, I just forward that email into Matrix. And then in the body of the email, I just say due tomorrow and then remind me in a week or something like that. And now I'm able to actually set a reminder on emails that I get from anywhere directly from my phone, even when I'm away from the computer. And then now I'm going to switch gear again, and let's switch over to Microsoft Teams. As I mentioned, you do not have to use Matrix within Microsoft Teams, but if you do use Microsoft Teams, Matrix is very powerful. And so I'll show you real quick on how to get set up there. So if you go to the App Store and you search for Matrix, afterwards you can actually save Matrix here, pin it on the left-hand side. when you click on Protomatrix inside Teams, you see the exact same view as the web app, right? You have your projects, you have your home view, you have your quadrants, etc. But there's a couple features inside Teams that's very unique with Protomatrix. So if you go to the chat here, one thing you can do is install what's called the one-on-one view. So if you click on this plus, you choose Protomatrix, and you add the one-on-one view. What I mentioned earlier around people-centric collaboration is an ability for you to understand what you need to work on or what you're working on together with a colleague. So by going to the one-on-one view, what happens is that I can install the one-on-one view for every single one of my coworkers and then select the coworker. And now I can see all the tasks I have in common with my coworkers across my entire party matrix. It is such a powerful way to have your one-on-one meetings. So again, if you're managing a team, you can go and go to this particular view and be able to see, what each person is working on, what's overdue, what they last modified, what's their priorities. And then not only that, when you have a meeting with them, you can actually click add share task and create tasks directly from Microsoft Teams without ever having to walk into or open up your Protomatrix application. It's something that I think is one of the most underrated features in Protomatrix, and not everyone explores and finds it. So if you do use Teams and you do want to use Protomatrix in a collaborative environment, I think it's a very neat way to ensure that you're able to delegate tasks very, very effectively. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump back to my Protomatrix here. And I want to start wrapping things up and be able to go and give you some guidance on how to best use Protomatrix. I do want to mention that we do have resources on our website. For example, a common question I get from customer is, what are all the different commands? And so if you search for commands Protomatrix, you'll be able to land to this page, and you can see what are the type of commands you can type into the chat system. We also have Protomatrix for every single platform. And so if you go to the download page here, you can install Protomatrix on the desktop app, which I recommend if you're on Windows in particular, because sometimes just having Protomatrix be present, be able to open it very easily, makes it easy to access your priorities. We also have Chrome and Edge extension that lets you convert any web page into a Protomatrix action items. With that, I'm going to jump back to my presentation here. So now it's on you. Sign up for Protomatrix and use our app in Teams and Outlook if that's applicable. Again, I would create at least 3 projects: your personal priorities, your shared team priorities, and your key initiatives. Invite appropriate team members and pitch to them on why it's important to focus on high impact tasks. The reason we do these webinars is because it helps everyone understand the basics of Protomatrix without having to go too deep into the weeds. So hopefully you feel the same way after having watched this webinar. And then fourthly, create items in Protomatrix with due dates. Again, I think that's the most powerful feature, ensuring that you know exactly when to work on something and then set those reminders. And then lastly, ruthlessly prioritize. I think, to be 100% honest, success from prioritization is not about the software, right? You could be using anything. You could be using pieces of papers or sticky notes or whatever, and you'll achieve similar success. All we do with Protomatrix as a software is to make this easier. And then we're able to track the history of all these changes for you. And then we integrate with everything that you already use. That's the magic of Protomatrix. But other than that, it's on you and on your coworkers to think about how you prioritize your task and ensure that you're actually working on the right things. A couple of advice, if you're very new to Protomatrix, use it to track high impact tasks. You don't want to go down too far into the weeds. You don't want to spend, your time creating Protomatrix tasks that's going to take you 5 minutes to do. Might as well just get it done. But if you want to think about what are the things you should be working on versus the things you shouldn't be working on, or things that can actually be prioritized, that's where you should focus your effort in using our system. I always think of Protomatrix as a communication tool. Again, some people think of it as a project management tool, which is perfectly fine, but it's a way for you to actually communicate to others what your priorities are. And if you're able to do that successfully, you'll find that you'll get a lot of return on investment with our software. And then lastly, make sure that you use Matrix to manage your individual goals. For me, I have a lot of goals. I have a lot of things on my plate at any point in time. So just having that clarity and being able to write down those goals so then I can actually see it at any point in time is a very, very helpful exercise. Success with Matrix should look like the following. One, on a personal level, you're checking Matrix constantly to remind yourself of your goals. And then you have one central place to track all your priorities. At the team level, everyone on the team understands and are aligned on key tasks. If you're able to identify just one mismatch on priorities in any given week or month or quarter, then you know that you've already got a fantastic return on investment in terms of using Matrix. I think the worst thing that we can do in general is spend all our time and resources working on the wrong things. So by using Matrix and by projecting Matrix on your team meetings, you're bringing that hard conversation up front and ensuring that everyone is actually working on the right things. And then lastly, important emails are prioritized, especially if in a team environment, instead of just forwarding an email to team members, you're actually prioritizing the emails, you're actually attaching the emails to the right task, and you're triaging it, you're assigning it to appropriate team members, and then you're setting due dates and reminders on those emails. And so if you're able to actually ensure that your most important emails are never lost, then again, Matrix will provide you a ton of value. And then with that, I conclude my presentation and demo here. There's so many more features that you can learn from. And so be sure to check out some of our other webinars or reach out to us at any point in time if you have questions.